Rendering 10001000111110. Well, hello. Guys, we did it again. We're back. We're back. We made it. Guys, welcome back to your must-see Wednesday, must-see TV, must-see interneting. That's right, you guys. You thought you didn't when you did. It's pencil to pencil. We're back on your video scope, as Macho Man Randy Savage would like to say. If this is your first time seeing us, boy, are you in for a treat. This is a live cast where three expert cartoonists, that's these three Brady Bunch boxes right here, could I say, without being facetious, over 60, 70 years of experience? That's not just Mike. That's all of us.
Yeah, I bring that number down.
Or we'll ratchet it down a little bit. You guys, let's introduce the posse. My name is JAMAR NICHOLAS. I am a cartoonist in good standing. In the traditional book space, they call us author illustrators. Isn't that interesting? I am the creator and drawer and writer of Leon the Extraordinary, a series at Scholastic under the Graphics imprint. You've heard of Graphics. You've heard of Raina. You've heard of Kazoo. You've heard of Jeff Smith's Bone. You've heard of Dave Pilkey. All those guys were all on the same imprint. The Def Jam of graphic novel imprints. Leon, Worst Friends Forever is the next volume in my series. Will be out October 1st. It's now on sale for pre-order. Go get it. Why don't you? Guys, I would be remiss if I did not introduce my co-host. Get ready. Make the belt motion.
I can't.
That's right. Are you wearing pants? Don't get out. He is known in these streets as the world heavyweight champion of webcomics. He is known as Conley 316, Stone Cold. Steve Conley. What up, Steve Conley?
Gentlemen, good to see you.
Well, hello.
For folks who don't know who I am, my name is Steve Conley. I write and draw the webcomic The Middle Age, which you can read at middleagecomic.com. It's over on Webtoons. It's on Tapas. It's on Go Comics. Episode 300 was just posted, so you can read all 300 episodes for free. Go to middleagecomic.com.
300?
300. So it's I'm really happy with it. It's super exciting. It's enough for me to do my next book. I don't publish a book until I have the pages done, and so that will be happening this year. I also make role-playing game stuff. The next one's coming out. It's going to be called Nibblemancy. You can queue up now. I'm sculpting that the little Nibblemancer right now. I'm very happy with how that's turning out. But I think I would be remiss if I didn't mention our Coco host.
Coco host.
Our Coco host.
A Coco host.
Yes.
The physician scientist searching for a way to tap into the hidden strength that all humans have. Mr. McGee, you would not like him if he were angry. Mr. Mike Manley.
Oh, I love it.
Hello, ladies and James.
Hello, Mike Manley. Mike, that is a fantastic T-shirt you're wearing.
Yeah, it is.
We're in agreement. Mike, before I get to ADHD, what do you do, pray tell?
I do the Phantom and Judge Parker, and I drew your childhood.
Drew my childhood. You know,
that's my new. I'm gonna get a T-shirt that says "I drew your childhood."
I think that's a good thing to add to your shirt shop. I think I'd wear it. Or how about this guy drew my childhood, so we can sell it to other people.
Exactly.
So you guys, since we've come back from our hiatus, we've been giving you Gem Mint 10. Like if you slabbed these live casts, you'd be like a 9.8 grade with a certificate of authenticity.
No slagging. I'm not getting inside a little plastic box.
We've been going at it since we've come out hot out of the gate with a lot of superstar guests and even our really cool talk betwixt ourselves about sacrifice was a really well viewed episode.
Twixt ourselves?
Betwixt. So that makes me feel like you guys are glomming onto what we're doing here. There's not a lot of places else on the internet you're going to get this kind of intel. So thank you guys for your eyeballs and your hearts. So last week we had the Tribe guys on, not the Tribe Called Quest, Larry Stroman and Todd Johnson, and I hope you love that episode. We got a lot of really good reviews on that episode, Steve. Steve, did you glom anything from that episode with Larry Stroman and Todd Johnson? Any takeaways for you?
Well, I thought the idea of all that, I think I was just blown away by the amount of co-marketing and just the hustle that's going to go behind this project. I kind of left it going on. I knew what Tribe was from its imaged origins, but I'm super excited to see what they do. I think they said June was when they would be unveiling more. I hope we get to bring them back and see what they're doing next. But it was really exciting. I did watch that video again. I've been rewatching a lot of our videos lately. I don't think I'm all our views, but I'm a lot of them. And yeah, we've had some gems.
Oh, I love it. How about you, Mike? Any takeaways from guys who are kind of getting back on the horse and going into the modern time with a new project?
Never get off the horse.
So he's speaking truth there, right?
Never get off the horse.
But I did like
until you die.
I like that they were kind of eschewing all the regular distribution models at the same time. They'll just do whatever works. I feel like that's a really wise way to approach this landscape, given that you're thinking about so far away as June. Who knows how different it'll be by then.
Yeah, and but we don't want to give away too much if we don't want people to not go and watch the episode if they haven't watched it.
Oh yeah.
And and this is something very interesting is that there's a lot of anticipation for the lives, right? Hey, you're going live. Hey, Wednesday at 8. Oh man, sorry I missed it. Oh man, I missed it. It doesn't disintegrate. It doesn't it's not like sand through your fingers. Go back and watch it. I'm still the same handsome guy on the replay. Go back and watch it. And also, as a shout out for the archives, it's a rich archive that goes,
evergreen.
It's very evergreen. This goes back 4-something years. It's crazy talk.
It goes back to before we were actually doing this, when it was audio.
Yeah. We did have, was it like almost a year of audio?
Yeah.
And
the talkies.
Talkies. Right.
Radio killed the video stuff. Yeah, it goes back a while. So you guys, tonight this is a kind of like a glitchy duct tape and bubblegum episode. Like I've been lately having to reset my computer because sometimes I'll go on the live stream or Zoom and it's just like the camera's not coming on. I don't know if I have to do some updates or something, but I had to reset my computer. Tony Moore is here with us, but not right this second. I'm not exactly sure where Tony disappeared. So he was having some technical difficulties too. When he comes back, we'll put him on the screen. So just to give him some time to kind of get his deal together, um, before we went live, I was talking about time. Oh, there he is. Hey, Tony, we'll bring you in a little bit. Just chill. Time slipping into the future. And we talked about like the early aughts, like it was 2 weeks ago. And I don't know, Mike, you've been at this a little bit longer than us. Do you feel like I don't know, this time seems like it's going faster for you? And when you see us young graybeards talking, are you rolling your eyes like, guys, you don't even know the half of it? How do you?
Yes and no. I think the 80s does seem like a while ago, but there's that gray period in between, say, 2010 and now, where you go, like, Facebook gives me my memories every day. And so I've been on Facebook like 15 years now, I think. And so every day you see like, wow, that seems like it was only 5 years ago, but it says it was like 9 years ago.
Mhm,
But I think that's common as you get older.
mhm,
I know that people say that as you get older, time goes faster because when you're young, you have so much anticipation, but you don't have as much life. So it's like as a kid, it seemed like from 4th of July to Christmas was like really a long time. And now it seems like 4th of July means, oh, it's Christmas. I mean, literally, that time between,
mhm,
I don't even remember when I was in college. You would get out at the end of May, and then you'd have the exhibition, and then, which would be like the beginning of May.
mhm.
And as soon as it was the 4th of July, it seemed like summer's gone. It's like the beginning of summer, but literally that, because you would go back to school in the last week of August. That
Mhm.
month and 2 weeks would just burn so fast. It would burn so incredibly fast. So, yeah, I mean, the 80s does seem, I think anything before the internet and before cell phones definitely seems like a whole other era. And I had, a fairly long stretch of working in comics before there was any of that stuff.
Mhm, mhm,
And the people who were like, Walt and Howard and people who were, 10, 15 years older than me, I'm sure it seems like even more of a big difference, No more rubber cement,
mhm.
right? No, none of that, any of that stuff, I was looking at a bunch of art yesterday, the old production standards. I mean, it's just completely gone now.
Mhm, mhm.
Completely gone.
It's funny. I was just, how once in a while on Facebook you get these little like, "You're this old if you know what this is." It's like a rotary
Right.
phone, and it was the I forget the name of it, but I think it was like not decoupage, but it was like a French word, and it's like the little thing of glue that you used to use in school with like the rubber nipple on it.
Yeah.
And I think I put it on my face. I do these caption this things once in a while. I said,
Mucilage?
"Yeah, it's mucilage, right? Is that it?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it."
Now
And
we have that little guy that gets rid of that. The Mucilex guy gets rid of it.
Ask your doctor
that's
if
right.
mucilage is right for you.
And I think I put on my thing one of those, "Hey, what is this? Wrong answers only." And people kept saying, "That's glue for when I was in school." I'm like, "Yo, read the room. You're not following the
They
directions."
were getting like, oh, paste.
Paste.
Even still use paste now. Kids used to
Yeah,
eat paste in the old days.
and that's why we are the way we are.
And they turned out great. They
Yeah,
turned out great.
Ate
okay,
plenty of paste.
that's so funny. So speaking of time and time going by, we've been pals with this human being for a long time, and it's funny for us to kind of look back and everybody's got gray hair now. And it's funny. Like I remember when like none of us had that. We're all just like young, vibrating, ectoplasm trying to make things happen in the world. And now here we are. You know what I'm saying? So
and no vibrations is what is it?
I don't vibrate as much as I used to. It's
like I need a nap.
and what I love about kind of reaching out to our old pals and like Tony and saying, hey, would you mind coming on? He's like, yeah, of course. Is I'm a big fan of the journey. I know we all are kind of here for different things. I know Steve likes the tech, Mike likes the craft. I like the journey.
I like the mucilage.
You like the mucilage, and what I hope to get in tonight with Tony more is I just want to kind of talk about kind of like not exactly where we came from, but like where we are now. And I think that journey is just so interesting. And I don't want to talk anymore. I think we should just bring him in because he's going to fall asleep. Guys, I am so agog to bring you our super famous friend, Tony Moore. I'm going to bring him onto the chat. And I think we're going to have a fantastic show. Tony, prepare for rendering. I think he's frozen.
Yeah.
He's frozen.
I was braced. I didn't know what was going to happen.
Hey, brother, how are you? It's good to see you.
I'm hanging in there, man.
Oh, man, that's great. That's great. I hope we didn't talk too long, but I wanted to kind of put some...
No, I was fascinated by your conversation about horse glue.
Mucilage. And I wonder, like, how toxic was that stuff? Like, they just don't use it anymore. Is there better ways of making adhesives these days?
I mean, like that stuff that's literally like that whole like cartoon trope of horses being sent to the glue factory. That's what that is. Like that's when they boil down the hides and all that stuff. That's what mucilage is made from.
That's wild. Well, maybe I don't need that.
I want to be a hide boiler when I grow up.
Yeah. I mean, you can get a job, go to Louisville and get a job right down the road from the Kentucky Derby track. And
wow, they have a glue factory right next to the Derby track. That kind of makes sense.
They don't
actually
encourages the horses to run faster.
Dog food factory right next. You can smell the dog food from the horse track. It's pretty rough.
Yeah, that's wild. So, all right, let's get into it. So, Tony, a lot of guests we have on here, we usually do this thing I like to call the origin story. I kind of feel like we don't need to get into that. You're well documented at this point, and we're not going to waste time on backtracking on that stuff. It's old news. Talking about old, that's the theme of the night. But I do most of my thinking when I'm walking the dog, and I was trying to figure out a good way to kind of begin our conversation. So I thought I'd start it with this. I think it's very interesting that everybody gets into comics for their own reason. It seems like, well, I want to draw Spider-Man or whatever. That's not necessarily true. I would assume that most of us get into comics because we love comics, right? And you want to tell stories using this vessel. And then, we all kind of start around the same way, or we meet each other on the road. And then time goes by, and all of a sudden you're successful. Right. And I don't really know if success was ever a part of it. I think it sneaks up on a lot of us. And then some people, they're still on their road. But I wanted to ask you, how has your ride been? You know what I mean? Because we're all like old now and like looking back at shit. So like,
I mean, it's a fucking roller coaster. That's right. But yeah, I mean the whole gig is kind of wild. I mean, I got into the whole thing just because I love stories. Like I love telling stories, I love hearing stories and reading stories, and that whole thing. I used to sidekick from my granddad when I was a little kid. We go sit around in a cafe with him when he was bullshitting with all his old man buddies, and listen to these guys just weaving these tales of stuff that happened to them, and half of it was just outright lies. And while they're just sitting around the cafe drinking coffee, you know, waiting to kick off their day or whatever.
Yeah.
And between that and, you know, comic books and cartoons and, you know, I mean, even like music, like country music and folk music and bluegrass, a lot of that stuff that I grew up around, the best of it's all storytelling too. And that's really the like centerpiece, like the whole crux of why I got into all of it was
Mhm.
just because I love stories. And, um, you know, that's still the main thing I pursue. And even when I thought like the primary direction of my career trajectory was going to be um, comics, and I mean it is still. I mean,
Mhm.
but it's this kind of weird feeling where like I feel like my whole career I'm collecting puzzle pieces, and
Mhm.
like just when I got an idea of what I think the picture's going to be, I get a new piece, and when I plug it in, it changes the whole picture.
Mhm.
And so, um, you know, I'm just trying to like um, keep an open mind and like just like a just an open mindset and open eyes to, you know, opportunities that might show up that, you know,
Mhm.
might be a whole new avenue of telling stories or whatever. Um, and then, you know, ride the wave, see what happens. Not to mix like six metaphors at once there.
You know, and, you know, even just kind of like contrasting against like Mike, do you feel like the path was a lot clearer when you got into the industry than kind of like say kind of like I don't know like this new hybrid thing that a lot of people do like people are in you know doing you know television or videos or movies or doing you know other like transmedia things.
Well, I mean, as a teenager, well, it was like I said, when I was 13, I wanted to do this. So all the people I admired, from Kirby to Frazetta to Mobius to Neil Adams, all the people that I wanted to be like. I wanted to be as good as those guys could do anything. So you would see, oh, this guy did pre-production for a movie, or this guy did a movie poster or whatever. So it seemed like once you got your work good enough to be hired, if you were good, then you would have these other opportunities that would present themselves to you because your work was good enough. So,
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't, I mean, I always wanted to work in animation and things like that, but I didn't look at it like, well, first I'll do my comic, then I'll sell my comic to Hollywood, and then it just seemed like those guys were always doing a movie poster, or they were doing pre-production or designs or things. So it's like the path was basically get good. Whatever you had to do, get good. And once you were good enough, it was never like, oh, I'll be rich, or
Yeah.
that wasn't my thinking. I knew Frazetta looked like he was doing pretty well. I mean, most of the people I admired looked like they were doing pretty well, but that was not
Yeah.
that was not in my brain what I wanted to be. What I wanted was to be as good as the people whose work I loved. Right. That actually still is my modus operandi. I'm constantly trying to improve
Mm-hmm.
and make my work as good as the people I admire.
Tony, maybe my next question to you is because I'm looking at your art over here on my other screen, and I'm trying to hold off as long as I can before I put this art on the screen because then the chat's going to blow up because everybody's like, "Oh, I can't wait." Is what drives you to get better at this point in your career?
Um, I don't know. I mean, there's just kind of this like inherent like dissatisfaction. Like like right now I'm in a weird headspace
Yeah.
where like all of my work. So uh, rewind like a few years ago. just after the pandemic had kind of reached its fever pitch. Um, like life was super stressful, and I had just finished directing a music video, which was like the most ambitious project I've ever tried to take on.
Wow.
And uh, and then it felt like the whole universe was this pressure cooker, and I was trying to wrap up some stuff for Marvel, and then my mother-in-law found out she had terminal cancer, and just everything just felt like ratcheting stress upon stress, and it broke me. I didn't draw for like a year because I just burned out so hard from the constant stress that I would try to sit and draw, and I couldn't. Like it was like a well that had been there my whole life, and suddenly it was dry, and um, I didn't know how to process it. I had like a full on like existential fucking meltdown because I thought like, I've centered my whole life around this skill set, and I'm not built to do anything else. Like I'm not that good at any other thing. I don't know. I'd be like a paperweight without this. I don't. And slowly, I kind of got my mojo back, but it took. And I'm still not 100%, but uh, a lot of it just took like getting outside of that box and trying new stuff. But like in that process, something new clicked, and like the older we get, like those plateaus, those new levels become like fewer and farther between. And this was one that I wasn't really expecting, but I feel like I reached a place where like my ability to like recognize quality uh, started to really outpace my ability to produce it.
Mm.
And so work became this like way more tedious because for a long time, I couldn't see what was wrong with the piece until I had made the mistake.
Mm.
And then suddenly now, until like well after I'd made the mistake, I'd look at it in hindsight and be like, oh, I thought this was great when I turned it in, but now I see what I did wrong.
Right.
Like now, I mean, I'll still have those mistakes that I don't see until I'm kind of distant from them, but a lot more and more of them I see like as I do it. And I feel like my work is better than ever, but it's also like way more arduous than ever to produce. Um, and that's like a new struggle that I'm tackling now. But I feel like it's a good place. I mean, I don't know that it's a good, because it definitely comes with all kinds of like mental health
Right.
obstacles. But
Right.
at the same time, like as far as like for the work, like that's a pretty good place to be able to identify stuff so much more quickly. Um, and so yeah, I don't know where it goes from there, but I don't know. I feel like as far as just like what motivates me to keep getting better is like I don't want to feel like I'm sitting still. I feel like the instant I can't see those things and I can't be learning, then I've plateaued, like my final plateau.
Yeah. It's like you think about the idea that looking back on your work and being dissatisfied is a good thing, kind of, because it's like you haven't peaked.
Yeah, right.
It's
like sure, I hate 90% of the stuff that's out there with my name on it, but
well,
it's only up from here.
You might get to a point where if you talk to somebody who was, I would talk to somebody like, Williamson back in the day, there's that burst of youthful enthusiasm you have in your early in your career, where even though, you got all the ugly parts, there's a lot to be said for enthusiasm that'll shine through, even though, you might have some bad hands or some bad faces or wonky things. And I think you're right, because most artists' trajectories are that fast growth in your 20s, especially in this business, because you're producing so much work. So the more work you produce, the more opportunity that you have to go. It's like going to the gym every day, right? And it's sort of like being, I always say, it's like being in the Olympics, because you have to be. Comics makes you good at a lot of different things to do comics well, but then you can kind of plateau, and I think everybody kind of plateaus a little bit in comics if you're producing a high volume of work. So maybe in order to go to that next plateau, you have to produce less work, and maybe also be not as sure of the work, which I actually think is a good thing, because I think if you always feel like every time you're at bat, it's a home run, then you're kind of lying to yourself, you know. And
Right.
there are guys who come in the business who get really good, and then that's it. They never get any better. Or you might get really good when you're young and then feel like you don't have any challenges, you know, and you can kind of stagnate. And no one in comics, no editor, nobody you ever work for or work with will ever tell you, yo, slow down. You need to work on the,
Right.
you know, you don't get that.
I think seeing like the European publishing model, and like those guys are cranking out gorgeous work, and every American reader that sees it's like, oh my God, like how do they do this? It's like, well, yeah, they're putting out 50 pages a year. That's how they do it. They're being treated like real authors and paid real money. Like it's a different game. Um,
Right.
you know, and here in the U.S., people, you know, obviously the publishing paradigm requires deadlines and stuff like that. But then, you look at some books like Jeff Darrow on Hard Boiled, like you can't get that on a monthly deadline.
Mm.
Like, and when it's out, even if it was late, like, fast forward to now, nobody remembers that it was late. They
Uh-huh.
just read the book and know that it's fucking awesome.
Uh-huh.
Like, so I don't know, like like when, going back to your little baseball metaphor there, where like every time you step up to the plate, it's got to be a home run. Like in our minds, it's always that, but then in practice, it's almost always, okay, if I can just get a base hit out of this, like, let's just go. Like,
Uh-huh.
I'll take a bunt if whatever I can get to get moving, because I got to get around this thing. Like,
Yeah.
that's the reality of the business, is like how often do you actually get to really swing for the fences?
Mhm.
Not all that often, really. Like when you're in the hardcore production pipeline, and at that point, I don't know. It feels like you're like, going back to the racetrack. At that point, you're a thoroughbred that's been tied to a plow. Like you never really get to know like how fast you could run, or like how good you could do if you had the opportunity to really see it through the way you want to.
Mhm.
Um,
It-
and that's kind of been what I've been doing with my work more,
Mhm.
because like we're all wired. Everybody's wired differently. As much as like most of us are cut from the same cloth. Like even in this business, you got your guys who are like your stalwart workaday, just pumping out pages, and God bless those guys because they're the ones who keep the whole industry going. I can't do that. Like I'm not a marathon runner. Like I'll be a sprint runner. I'll do whatever, but I can't do the long haul marathon grind. Like I'm not built for it. And recognizing that in myself, um, uh, was probably the best thing I could do for myself, as far as like saving my sanity, because otherwise I was lying to myself, trying to fool myself into thinking I could do that when
Mhm.
the reality was I cannot.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think I've mentioned it before, but I remember, I think it was Kevin Nowlin who said that Al Milgrom, who was, a longtime editor at Marvel, told him, you can be the guy who does, the fantastic job but you're not a monthly guy, and then you're the guy who does monthly comics. And it's kind of important for you to sort of figure out which person you are, because, you know, a lot of people would get an opportunity, but maybe they're too slow. Maybe they can't do 12 issues a year. Maybe they can do 4, or maybe they can only do 6. And there's nothing wrong with that. So the sooner you sort of figure out like how, you know, which type of artist you are, that sort of allows you to say, well, I'm not going to put myself in a position where I can't do it. And then I got to get fill-in issues and things like that, which was much more common when I started. That's actually how I would get that's how I got opportunities, because, you know, someone like JR would need a break, and he's a machine. You know, he was John Romita Jr. I mean, he was cut from the old cloth, you know. And it does seem like that older generation had that ability to sort of like shift gears in a way, because that's how the business was. So some guys got good at like doing a stylized version. Like they had, like Buscema had settings, right? He had amazing, beautiful, full pencils. Then he had like breakdowns and then shakedowns. And, you know, he had like 3 or 4 different, 3 or 4 different settings. It's kind of hard to do that now because the business is not set up in the way, because you also used to have then inkers who would say, well, we'll get this guy who's great at storytelling and layouts, but then we got somebody who's really good at rendering, and he can pick up the other part. I mean, you were doing, especially when you were working with like Rick Remender, I mean, you're doing your own thing, you're creating your own thing, you're doing your own book wholesale. So that's a whole different like game to play in. You're not playing in somebody else's game. You're playing in you're setting the rules of your game.
Yeah, I mean, but even that, like you know, you were saying like recognizing what kind of artist you are and all that stuff. Like, I don't know if it's still that way for a lot of guys, but it felt, especially back then, like you were like kind of led to believe that there was really only one way to do it. You know, like that you couldn't choose what kind of artist you were gonna be, because you just had to be the guy who turns shit in all the time.
Right.
And even when we first took Fear Agent over to Dark Horse, like we slowed down the production a little bit, because that first run of Fear Agent was like kind of breakneck, trying to pump it out, and it was an extra rough headache for me, because, like, you know, we had started this thing, we really wanted to see it through and tell the story because we loved it and believed in it, but at the same time, like, it was selling like cancellation numbers like pretty much the entirety of its publication. And especially there at the beginning, like, I still had bills to pay, I still had, you know, rent and shit I had to do, so I was doing another book at Vertigo at the same time. And so here I am, a guy who has now recognized that he is not a marathon kind of guy. And like, you know, as the years progressed, like, I, you know, was diagnosed with ADHD, and I realized that, like, I'm not really great at multitasking and spinning multiple plates. Like, let me focus on the one right in front of me, and I'll knock the shit out of it. But if you're asking me to like spread my focus, I cannot. Like, I'm guaranteed to fuck them all up, and that's pretty much what I was kind of like forced into, just by the universe, not by any person.
Right.
Because yeah, I had to pay bills, so I took this Vertigo gig, you know, which was a blast. And I loved doing it, and it was another creator-owned book, which was awesome to have. But at the same time, like, it was a necessity because I needed those paychecks. Um, and then I'm also trying to make Fear Agent work somehow too, and realizing I've chosen the polar opposite uh, lifestyle of what I needed to, based on, like, you know the model of person I am, like that, uh, and it was a nightmare. Like I mean, uh, I made life hard on a lot of people, including myself, because I didn't know, what I was, how I was supposed to manage it. I was just trying to manage it the best as I was told, and I
Right.
wasn't built for it. I fucked up a lot of deadlines and made a lot of people mad, and like, I've tried to make amends and apologize to everybody that I know, I made their lives harder, um, just because I didn't know what I was doing, and you know, didn't know who I was and how I was built, how all of it was supposed to work together.
Right. But how could you know until you did it? Because this is
Right.
not like a job as a profession where there's like, well, you do this, then you do this, then you do, it's not like like being an accountant. There's no regularity to it, and every job is different, and every page has a different amount of effort. And so yeah, until you did it long enough that you actually learn about yourself, because everyone just wants opportunity. When you start, I want opportunity, I want to be able to do it. Then you
Right.
find out, like, oh man, I can't draw 12 hours a day 7 days a week.
No, I mean, especially not the older you get. Like, I could do those all-nighters in my 20s, do,
Hmm.
3, 4, 5 of them a week, and uh, take one long sleep day, and get back at it. But like, I can't do that shit now in my mid 40s. Like,
Yeah.
I don't bounce back. Like, if I have one all-nighter, the rest of my week is fucked. Like, it's rough.
You know what's also kind of interesting about this, while all of this is happening, Tony, and probably towards the part where you started to figure out what your limits were, then we entered the era of self care. All of a sudden, everybody's like, "Well, hey, wait a minute! You need to treat yourself better. You should you should
Yeah.
take a break and take a nap and don't work that weekend." And that really butted up against how cartoonists have worked all this time up until then. You know what I mean? It's like, well, wait a minute. Isn't crunch normal? Is it working on Christmas
Right.
normal? This is just what you have to do. Which,
Right. And like the kind of blossoming, mental health, and like the recognition of neurodiversity, and realizing, like, pretty much all of us have some sort of, like, neurodivergence, whether it's ADHD or on some part of the,
mhm,
autism spectrum in some way or another. Like, oh shit, almost all of us are wired like that, and that's how we operate. It's,
mm,
um, and that comes with a weird, like, kind of common symptom of tying our self-worth to our work, and then you know and then that all kind of runs counter to, like, we're all learning so much new about ourselves, and then also learning that we have been the most horribly abusive person in the universe to ourselves our
mhm,
entire lives. And
mhm.
then, like, how do you even reconcile all that shit,
Get a hammock. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's really interesting. And now, like the newer generations of cartoonists, which I think is always interesting, that put a couple of generations of people in the same room. They all have different opinions on the next one or the next one, or even us uh, before then. So like, I kind of wonder how things. This is kind of scary. Like, I wonder how things will get done in the future, because like part of the abusive part of this is like, well, you have to do it because no one else is going to do it, and with that
Mhm.
comes the sacrifice.
Mm.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
maybe to even somebody who's starting out, I feel really uncomfortable saying no. You know what? You do what you need to do. I think that's probably the cleanest advice I could give somebody. But it's not going to be easy, and you're probably going to find out a lot of things about yourself along the way.
Yeah, and I mean it's hard to abandon that
Yeah.
kind of work ethic too. I mean, like I grew up on a farm out in the middle of nowhere, and like, you know, we grew most of our own food. You know, we
Mhm.
repaired, you know, all the stuff that we had. Like if somebody was going to fix it, it was probably one of us fixing it. It was like it was a very DIY kind of, you know,
Mhm.
mindset, um,
Mhm.
because that's just how self-sufficiency and living out in
Right.
you know, rural areas, especially if you're like actually agricultural, like that's how that works.
Right.
And that's like, I mean, that's how I grew up, and that's part of what, you know, like I think it served me well through my career, but it's also like I recognize the toxicity of it when it comes to like, you know, dialing back and taking a breather, because, you know, we also just have this American grind culture of what, you know, uh, working yourself into an early grave is some kind of fucking like badge of honor. Like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The warrior
you know,
staff. Yeah. We talk about that a lot. Well, you know what? To lighten the mood, because I maybe we should look at some artwork. What do you think?
We'll look at some caskets. We'll roll up some caskets.
yeah,
Hey, hold on. When Tony was talking about, he brought it back to like the thoroughbred who's yoked up. I was trying to insert that glue joke in there. I thought it would all come full
that's
circle.
it. We're all pulling the plow straight to the glue factory.
All right.
Get to retire just in time to climb into a coffin.
All right. All right. So also I thought the chat was frozen. It's bone silent in the chat. Everybody is at rapt attention. So good on you, Tony. All right, guys, let's look at some artwork. So this is kind of like your new edition of Fear Agent covers. Is that what this is?
Yeah. So we just put out a new omnibus edition, or well, two omnibuses, omnibi.
I'm gonna buy.
Uh, and so yeah, this is the cover to the first one. This is a close up of the first one, and then the second one is um, an
It's like
aged like old man Heath. But yeah, that's Heath
yeah.
Houston, our hero. Uh, I think that's easily the most technical drawing I've done of him.
Mm.
Uh, I really tried to hammer down all the. Sorry, I don't know if you guys can hear it. My wife is trying to call me.
No, but yeah, you need to take a break. Are you good?
No, I don't know. I've told her what's up. I don't know why she's surprised I'm not answering.
You know, and I almost feel bad about like going to the next slide because damn, like I just want to look at this. You know.
Oh, is this digital or traditional and then color digital? How are you? What's your steps here?
So I generally work traditional pen and ink, and then color digitally. Um, a lot of my prep work I've taken to doing digitally also, um, just because like it's a lot quicker to like hammer out proportions and perspective and technical stuff digitally. You know, you don't want to get that skeleton laid in, and you know if you find out you've made some grave mistake, it's a whole lot easier to uh, make big unilateral changes digitally uh, early on, and then I can, you know, get the layout all put in place. And I like to do the layout stuff digitally at the beginning too, because I can also account for like trade dress and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I'm not like scrambling to figure out where I'm gonna like wedge that shit in afterwards, because nothing's more heartbreaking than having to like completely retool something
Yeah.
because of that. So if I can go on and have that in place, like from jump in the layout, then I can work around it and make it stronger.
Yeah. Yeah, and Fear Agent's one of my favorite things. Like when you guys were putting this stuff together earlier, like You know,
Thank
I don't
you.
show my fanboy side a lot, but I was a big nerd for Fear Agent. So good on you, Tony.
It's definitely the thing I've worked on that's probably the dearest to my heart.
Hmm. Hmm. It's all great. And so, and you have a couple of different new things going on here. You want to kind of explain what we're looking at here?
Yeah. So several years ago, I encountered this country musician. I heard his stuff on the radio, and I fell in love with it. His name's Tyler Childers, and he's also from Kentucky. And there's just something in his music that like feels legit. You know, like
Mm,
a lot of country music, especially, uh, is really has become really vapid. Where it used to be a lot like more rich storytelling and stuff like that. Um, Tyler's work has there's a sense of like a life that's actually lived,
yeah.
you know, in the stories, and I really gravitated to it and loved it. And uh, well, I won't go into the whole story, but I went to a concert, a John Prine concert, and on my way out the door, I had a couple of these little enamel pins that I had made sitting on the kitchen table, and I just thought, well, maybe I'll run into him at the merch table or something, because Tyler was opening for John Prine,
Mm,
and so I just snatched the pins up, put them in my pocket, and went and uh, gave them to the guy who was working the merch table, and you know, was just kind of hoping they would make their way back to him, and never really expected anything out of it. And then fast forward like a few weeks, and I get a message from my wife saying that he had reached out and wanted to see if I was interested in working on an album cover uh, for him. Uh, so that's what this is.
very
It's
cool.
called Country Squire, but it's got a lot of like kind of weird esoteric stuff, and a lot of people think that all this stuff is like me trying to sneak it in under him because he has a very wholesome image.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but almost everything in this is something that he presented to me. Uh, and if it, the stuff that he didn't present, it's stuff that, you know, we hammered out together at my kitchen table, like trying to figure out how to fill it out, you
Right.
know, and put as much conceptual meat on it as we could.
Love it.
So yeah, that's the album cover for Country Squire. And then
Very cool. All right. So rap fink going on. I love it.
Yeah.
yeah, he asked me to do a poster for his performance at the Fillmore in Detroit, and I thought, well, Detroit,
Yeah.
it's got to be automotive related, and if it's going to be that for me, it's going to be Ed Roth style. So
Right. You
that would
can't
make
not.
sense to do to
Were
do
you a big
rap.
fan of cartoons, magazine, and all that stuff as a kid?
Yeah, actually, like pretty much everything I know about how to draw cars is from George Trosley's like
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
little tutorial sections in Cartoons magazine. I have like a milk crate of them that I inherited from my uncle when he moved out of my grandparents' house. And that's literally like that's how I draw cars is the way
Yeah.
that George Trosley showed me how to draw cars.
And I'm loving the acting in your hands in these illustrations
Oh,
too. It's
thanks.
fantastic.
That's the Mad magazine in me.
Like, oh wow, this
Oh.
is cool.
So this was before Tyler had like presented his concept for the album cover. This was me just kind of like concocting something that I thought would make a cool album cover.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I presented I call it my hillbilly mandala. I wanted something that had kind of that Eastern religion Zen kind of feeling, but was also like Eastern Kentucky
Yeah.
sound. So it's got a kind of that a lot of mainstay elements that, you know, if you've ever been in Appalachia, um, like all these elements are things that you would be familiar with, especially if you spend any time out in the woods.
And I love the rendering on it, and I've always loved that in your work. Tony, how close are you getting in on the page now? Like, we're getting older. Like, are you like glasses off, like right up against it, or like how?
Oh yeah, I mean, I got the like my myopia is my like physical superpower when it comes to drawing. Like a lot of people like get blurry without their glasses if they get too close, and they get that farsightedness as we get older.
Yeah.
Like not me. I actually have to take my glasses off to work most of the time now.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm getting in there tight. Sure.
Let me get into the pocket. I love it. All right. Oh, okay. Hold on. Before you go into this, I don't know if I can find it. Our buddy Bill O'Donnell kind of called this before we even got to it. I'm going to bring this up. And if I'm wrong, forgive me. Tony, sorry, cover your face. Tony, the cover you did for Heavy Metal Volume 2 was incredible. How did that come about?
So the guy at Massive, who was set to publish the reboot, was a guy I just met at conventions, like when he was younger. And had some beers with. At that point, I think he was, trying to become an artist himself, and kind of found that he was pretty good at, the skills that publishers need. And fast forward a few years later, and he's lining this thing up, and was set to take that over, and reached out and asked if I would do the issue #1 cover for the reboot, which was unfortunately ill-fated. I think they pulled the plug on it before it ever happened. But I mean, I poured everything I had into this one. I think this is maybe the best cover I've done, because it's definitely one of very few covers I can point to where I was able to just work on it until I felt like it was done.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't abandoned. Like I literally turned it in when I looked at it and I couldn't see anything else I wanted to change. And I can't really think of any other projects where I've had that. So,
And that's sort of an homage to the original cover, which was two robots fighting, right? I remember that.
Yeah. The perspective on that one was a lot more flat. It was just kind of like this grid, like industrial kind of grid wall.
Right. Yeah.
But the black robot was like, kind of overtly sexual.
Right.
Had this kind of like dominatrix thing, but she had like a demon face for some reason. Looked like the movie Green Goblin face or something.
Because why not?
Yeah, which like that part I couldn't really figure out, but I tried to make it that idea a little more cinematic. So I changed the perspective and made the robot this kind of like love slave robot that had maybe had enough. And
I love the fear agent wrench. It's about to come down on
you gotta have the gigantic adjustable wrench.
Yeah.
Obviously, you were a big heavy metal fan. I mean, for that magazine was so influential for American cartoonists, because that's the first time we got to see stuff like Mobius.
Oh yeah, I mean it changed. I think I don't know of an artist that encountered it as a young person that it didn't like completely change their life.
And Tony, now you've for the most part done all of your color work, have you? I mean, I know you've worked with people. I think
sometimes the assembly line process
right
forces you to partner up with other people, but I try to color myself every time I can.
Those are covers, right? I mean, even when you're doing Fear Agent, you were doing the covers. You're coloring the covers.
Yeah. I've never colored interiors. I'd probably hang myself after doing that.
I just want to put it on record that Tony, your color work is underrated. It's so,
Totally agree.
it's
Totally
so,
agree.
It's so good.
The separation there, the way they got those lights, those ceiling lights, like I think the default would be to make them very rigid and organized, and you've got them off kilter to one another.
Yeah.
The whole thing is awesome.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I mean, like, since the theme of this visually is kind of like chaos and I mean, she's literally just wrecking shop on everything in her path in this. I wanted her to, if it was in her radius, then it would be broken as much as possible. So, but I've been trying to focus on like setting up planar hierarchies within the image, trying to really isolate the levels of depth and tie them together with color, and then work with the juxtaposition of hue and whatever.
So
It's all an uphill battle. I mean, I'm still struggle with a lot of it.
do you do a color comp, and are you working in Photoshop? What are you working in?
Yeah, I usually do a color comp now, especially. But beforehand, I was usually just diving in. I would tend to kind of like see in a flash in my mind, like see the what I thought the finished version should be, and then just kind of work toward that. But and I still do that, but I find if I hammer out a color comp, I can get to that a little easier because I'm not doing it on the finished one where the stakes feel higher and I have to like get it plowed through as quickly as possible.
Yeah. It's fantastic.
But I'm doing a lot of that on Procreate on my iPad.
Okay.
And then I bring that over into Photoshop where I do the final, like, the final crank on it.
And what are you working, like very large files? I mean, what size is the DPI is the image?
Oh, I was gonna say like file size, yeah, they're probably pretty huge. But yeah, they're 600 DPI generally. I think I might have done that heavy metal one at 900 just because it was for heavy metal. I thought, well, maybe they want to make posters of it, and I'll, if I can have it 50% more high res for posters, then let's do that.
A phrase has jumped into my mind: "Scratch disk is full."
Yeah. I've definitely gone to like add a new layer, and it's like cannot. Time to merge some of these dudes. Streamline this shit a little bit.
Oh, it's fantastic. All this stuff is great.
I don't need 700 freaking layers.
Do you?
Are you a layer guy?
Yeah, I was about to.
Oh god, like so many.
Excellent.
Do you name your layers, or you just kind of hunt and peck through it?
I mean, I go into it fully intending to name the layers. And the first like 15 or 20 are meticulously layered, or meticulously named. But by the time you get to like layer, 33, it's done.
What is this for?
So this is one of my later Marvel covers for the I think it was called like Planet Symbiote or something like that.
Right.
It was for Knoll or whatever his name was, the symbiote king or whatever.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I wanted to make a, I don't know, kind of a cool pulpy shot of him holding the earth.
Feels very Richard Corbin to me.
Well, that's very nice of you to say. I appreciate that.
It's I can feel that kind of feeling from it, and maybe it's the lighting too, because he would always do that kind of cinematic, the double lighting,
Oh yeah. Star Trek.
Yeah.
Like deep core shadow, and I definitely was shooting for that when I did this. I actually have a reference photo of myself holding a softball or something
Mm-hmm.
like close to my camera, and I had lights set up around me so that I could more accurately, put that into the piece when I got to that stage.
Do you think this is an interesting question? Do you guys think, and maybe I'll just throw this out to the room and you, Tony, do you think that people don't use as much staged reference as they used to? I guess because you could just quickly like do Google image searches. But you saying you like pose this yourself in your studio, I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if
Mhm.
I mean there are definitely like some artists who do, because I know like Paulo Rivera posts his
Yeah.
like Wacky Reference Wednesday stuff, which
Yeah.
really kind of sparked me into wanting to up my game on that front. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I know a lot of people use like 3D models for stuff,
Yeah,
which I also do
yeah,
to a degree.
yeah.
Um,
It's fantastic. I want to keep pushing through these. These are great.
Yeah.
So, and have you and Tony, with all of your kind of like concert covers and poster projects, is that stuff that just kind of falls into your lap? Do you kind of just kind of search out some stuff because you're just interested in it and go, hey, what do you think about me doing a cover? Like, how do some of these gigs happen?
well, a lot of it kind of in the same way that like a lot of comics gigs kind of like started to show up after The Walking Dead
Yeah.
kind of kicked the doors open for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like working with Tyler on that album cover stuff, and then especially directing the music video for him. That stuff started to kind of like connect me to other musicians, and so then they would start reaching out and asking if I would do like a gig poster for them or
Yeah.
whatever, a tour
Mhm.
poster. Like that Hitchhiking Skeleton. A lot of those are musicians that were kind of in Tyler's orbit, who may have also known my work through comics, because I've been amazed at how many guys on that scene are actually like deep cut comic nerds. Like
Mhm.
it's wild.
Yeah.
I never would have expected it, but it's cool. And then some of these are like this Laurel Cove poster was a music festival that I went to down in Eastern Kentucky, like one of my favorite music festivals I've ever been to. And the guy asked if I'd be interested in doing a print, and of course I
Do,
was.
how often? And I just had this funny thought in my head. How often does does somebody from your neighborhood knock on the door and go, "Hey, Tony, you do the comics, right? We would love if you could do our newsletter cover."
I mean, nobody knocks on my door. Anybody who's seen driving up my driveway should have a white flag. I live about a quarter of a mile off the road, so I can see them coming forever
Yeah.
before they get there. But yeah, I mean, I do get people that reach out every once in a while asking me to like do posters for local stuff.
Yeah.
Generally, my terms, like I do stuff like this because it's something I'm into, and then my payment for it is usually like I take my payment in product that I can turn into money, because if I dropped a price tag on them for like my time for this, they absolutely would not be able to pay for it.
Right. And maybe my last question about the gig posters is, I think this is really interesting. What are some of the differences in their idea of a deadline versus, say, like a comic project?
Well, it's more or less the same, because it all kind of ultimately depends on like when's the latest we can get it to the printer to have it produced in time to be at the thing when we need it, and that's the same basic jam as comics.
Okay. I was just wondering if they kind of go like, "Hey, we need this. Can you get this to us next year?" That kind of like weird window.
I mean,
you don't see
like that Hitchhiking Skeleton, when that guy asked me, I would say almost a year and a half out, which was great. That and that ultimately was produced as a 5-color screen print.
Mm.
Okay, 18 by 24, like gig poster size screen print.
Yeah.
Which I was really tickled with the way the production came out on it. It was printed by a company called Ink Lounge in Colorado. It's just one guy runs the whole shop, and it turned out stellar. I, with gig posters like this, I try to make it as much of a pain in the ass for myself as possible, because the joy I get out of doing these is, like, if it's a screen print, I've only got like a 5-color print is kind of a, like, gilded print anyway. Usually you're doing like 3. So 5 is kind of like, a little bit of its own ass, but it's still a very limited color palette, and I like to see how much I can squeeze out of it with just 5 colors.
Yeah.
And make it look like as much as possible with as little as possible.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest joy I get out of those, is just the like technical challenge.
Right. Right. You're challenging yourself in a different way in every one of these projects. All right, let's see where we are. Oh, yeah, this is fantastic.
So yeah, this is another guy from Eastern Kentucky, goes by Laid Back Country Picker. He's actually a social studies teacher at a really small high school in Eastern Kentucky. But a couple of years ago, I was listening to kind of the goth music that I grew up listening to. That's like my relaxation, is I slip into a hot bath and put on like 80s and 90s goth music. And I was listening to Bela Lugosi's Dead, and there was something about the structure of the song that sounded like the structure of some of David's, like, kind of rockabilly stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I pitched it to him, knowing that he's a big Bowie fan, and that Peter Murphy from Bauhaus was a big Bowie fan. And I thought that would be some like common ground for him to listen to it and approach it. And I was like, listen to this, tell me what you think, because I think you would do a killer cover of this. And then he listened to it, and he dug it. And then I was actually going to the music festival down there shortly afterwards, and the whole drive down, I had it like rolling in my head, and I concocted a whole music video for it. And I was like, oh no, hear me out. Feel free to tell me to fuck off, but I'm seeing a music video, and I think it would be awesome. And it's like a young couple goes into a haunted house, and they're seeing all the ghosts and whatever, and they are like unfazed by all of it until at the end they see his wife, who's the drummer, like, does not emote. She's just like deadpan. The all that's her like stage persona. And so then at the end, the kids see her, and that's the thing that scares the shit out of them. And then like doors slam and everything's silent, and cut to the outside of the haunted house. And it's like the kids have been like swallowed, and that's the whole concept of the video. And he loved it. He thought it was great. And so last October we made it. So I shot my first live action music video with those guys.
That's fantastic.
For this one.
Did you board it?
I did not board this one. I did board the animated Country Squire video. I did a couple boards and a couple of scene color palettes. But I was juggling a lot at that time, like trying to also, there's like a crypt set in the video, which I built out of extruded cardboard foam insulation boards that I cut with a heat knife and painted up and decorated with like Halloween shit I had in my garage.
That's fantastic.
It was a lot of scrambling to do a lot of pre-production work on that one. I didn't get to do as much like planning as I really wanted.
Yeah.
There's a lot to love on this piece, but that hand, holy cow.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
Yeah, you gotta.
You really got it in there. Yeah, that's good. I love it.
Oof.
I sat and I must have taken 35 pictures of me like in that pose, trying to like get it right.
Oh, that's so
A little bit of Jack Davis, a little bit of
Yeah.
McFarlane, like
yeah,
kind of strike that balance.
I love it.
When you're doing the video stuff, I mean, that's sort of an interesting challenge to go into the whole
Mhm.
technical side of trying to get what you want on camera. And was that, do you have help with that? Do you have somebody who's really good at, like a director of photography, or are you really good at video? Is that, and then the editing, that whole process, how does that work for you?
With the live action stuff, I definitely leaned on the crew that I was working with. My buddy Zach has a video project called Musical Moonshine, and they do a series of videos called the three sheets sessions, where they do nice professional music videos for like Appalachian, like country and bluegrass artists who may not have the budget for that type of stuff,
Okay.
but are deserving of having nice things. And so he's a producer for the local PBS affiliate for KET, and um, uh, so he and his crew have worked together pretty tightly on a lot of different video projects, and I leaned on them. You know, I was able to describe it in pretty deep detail what I was after, and they were able to make it a reality. Um, with the animated video, I storyboarded the whole thing, did a lot of like color mock-ups of like how I wanted the scenes lit. Um, you know, I did an animatic from my storyboards for the pacing and gave all that to the animators, and they, made that a quote unquote reality. But with the live action stuff, I'm literally there's only so much you, that you can create or change, because you're forced to work within the confines of reality. Where with the animated video, we're literally building everything you see on screen from scratch, so
Right.
we can make it whatever we want.
And this image is from that.
Yeah, that's from the animated video. A little bit of a spoiler. Yeah, the conceit of that video is Tyler buys this shitty old camper that he's going to rehab, and the plan is for he and his wife to live in it while they build their future. And it's just an absolute nightmare, and it falls apart while he's driving it home. But they keep it and see it through. And then at the end of the video, it fast forwards to them as an old couple, like on their way to their retirement, and it's a Jetsons like little spaceship, and I've built this kind of Jetsons future Appalachia with some kind of fixtures of Eastern Kentucky. And so you've got the little dome house buildings on spires, but you've got the clouds, but then you've got mountains peeking up, like the Smoky Mountains peeking up through the clouds and all that stuff.
Can you see that on YouTube?
You can, yeah. If you Google Country Squire music video, you'll see it. For me, that video, like my prime inspiration for that video was Mad Monster Party, the Rankin Bass Halloween special.
Yeah.
Because I've never made any secret of my like undying love for Jack Davis. Like he is the be all end all for me. And Davis's design work and stuff on that Mad Monster Party was like super inspirational for me. And so the Country Squire video was basically my opportunity to have that, like for a little bit of time I got to like play Jack. So I designed all the characters and style sheets and designed the look of everything that I could.
Fantastic work, Tony.
Beautiful.
Oh, that's awesome. Is this kind of like an alt, close like a glow in the dark alt or something like that?
It is, yeah. So this was for Tyler's first performance at the Ryman Auditorium in Nashville, which was huge. And really fun to go down and watch. Um, and when he asked me to do it, one of the nicknames for the Ryman is the Mother Church,
Mm.
because I think it was built as a church, and when you go in, it still feels like a church.
Mm.
Um, and so I wanted something that had some kind of like religious iconography connotations, but then
Mhm.
also some of the like weird esoteric elements that I know he loves. Um, and so it had a glow in the dark layer printed over top of it.
Oh wow, yeah,
So like, yeah.
that's
So you get the regular poster in daylight, but then with a black light or in the dark, you see the kind of like Alex Gray
mm.
poster. The halo is actually John Coltrane mapped out the tonal relationships in musical scales and different keys, and it creates this um, these little clusters of notes that make chords for different keys,
Mm.
and then the fifths for each thing, and it makes a little pentagram. So I overlaid that with the tetragrammaton, and kind of made that a more kind of little, a little of a deeper esoteric
Yeah,
kind of thing.
wow,
Uh,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And do
You don't
you?
put that over your bed, right?
Oh, okay, here's some terms for this from
yeah,
the video. Uh-huh.
yeah. So that's the Tyler style sheet,
Yeah.
and I don't have any screen grabs from the video, but the animators built a really faithful
Mm.
model from it that I was really tickled with. Um,
This is fantastic. And I'm sure all of these projects kind of scratch itches in different ways.
oh, for sure, for sure. I mean, like I've always loved animation, and um, there's definitely like time obstacles to doing that type of thing yourself.
Yeah.
But I worked with a studio called Bomper that RCA put me in touch with. Um, we actually like had tryouts with a bunch of different animation studios,
Hmm.
and Bomper had the most compelling examples that showed me they knew exactly what I wanted, um, and they were awesome to work with.
That's fantastic. This is the end of the slideshow.
Well, that's a
This is great stuff, man.
Yeah, beautiful.
hey,
And while
I've
you
always loved
while
Robert
you
Earl Keen getting to do that poster, that even just obliquely being able to like associate with Robert Earl Keen was amazing.
Are you doing the typography too?
Yeah, and so much as I'm typing it out on layers in Photoshop. But yeah, it's all that's all fonts from Letterhead, I think.
Right, right. But I mean, still, I mean,
Yeah.
that's a essential part of the design is the typography.
Mhm.
I wish I were better at it, but I'm happy with what I was able to eke out there.
Well, you've always had a super strong design sense, and it's really
Thanks.
it's easy
I
to
feel
see.
like I feel like just like bare bones like graphic design is one of my weaker suits for sure.
Mm.
Um, like I'm just not as comfortable with. I'd much rather like I feel good with composition as far as
Mhm.
like within a piece,
Mhm.
and then when I have a weak composition, I can hide it with a bunch of lines. Um, but as far as like just raw compositional elements of graphic design, typography, that type of stuff, I don't feel very adept. But I'm glad you like it.
So, like, you're not basically like kind of putting that out there when you're doing projects. Hey, I can let me put this typeset together. You're not really saying all that, but you'll do it
Yeah,
if
right.
you have
Like, do you have a guy that can do this? Because that'd be great.
to. Now, Tony, while you guys were talking about some other things, I kind of jumped through your Marvel covers. Did you want to say anything about any of your kind of like Marvel projects?
I mean, like, I've gotten to work on a lot of fun stuff for those guys. They always seem to want me on their kind of like weirdos and monsters and psychopaths. And that's fine with me. Like, I know, like, my style is not probably conducive to like what a mainstream superhero audience would want. But getting to work on Deadpool was amazing. Getting to do work with Jerry Duggan and Brian Posehn was perfect. I mean, when they first reached out and asked me if I was interested in doing a Deadpool reboot for the Marvel Now stuff, like my initial response was like, why and would I want that? But then they told me Brian and Jerry were writing it, and I was like, yes. Like, they could write like VCR instruction manual. No, I'll draw it. It doesn't matter. And so that was a blast. I mean, the timeline was a grind, and it sucked the life out of me. And when I finished my run, they were like, "Do you want to do it again?" I was like, "Fuck no."
And I forget the timeline, but that was also you and Rick were really like lighting it up over there because you guys did Frankencastle and Spider Venom and all that other stuff.
Yeah, we had done all that stuff, and Venom, like, they gave me the first script for Venom like right before Christmas, and they were somehow like baffled that I was always 2 weeks late. I'm like, yeah, man, you gave it to me in the holiday time vortex. Like, no one gets anything done then. I don't know what you expected me, but they were seemingly understanding about it, and eventually, they asked me if I would want to hop off of Venom over onto the Deadpool reboot, which was great for me. I was really excited. And then, of course, in an effort to show them that like I was not this perpetual fuck up, and also kind of prove to myself that I wasn't, I hammered down. I busted ass on that thing, and I turned it in 2 weeks early.
Wow.
I'm lucky if I'm 2 hours early. Like, 2 days.
Yeah.
Like, that's outlandish. But I turned in the first issue 2 weeks early, and they were like, "Oh man, this is great! It looks awesome! Like, we're really thrilled with it." So corporate wants to double ship this month, so they're going to put out issue 1 and issue 2 in the same month.
Oh my
So
God.
unfortunately, now instead of being 2 weeks early, you're actually 2 weeks late. My life, I cannot win. Like, I cannot win with you guys.
These goalposts keep moving, man. What's up with that? And just maybe from a style thing, because I remember your work on like even Spider Venom. Like, there was a lot of like symbiotic noodly stuff all over the thing. Do you find, I don't know, like a rhythm in that stuff, or would you rather not do that much like spaghetti work on a page? Like,
No, I like it.
Yeah.
Like, it's probably too sad because I'll get lost in sauce sometimes,
Yeah.
And it's, I told Jeff Darrow, like, he was the worst, best influence a kid could have. Because, like, he, like, growing up with Mad Magazine and like the Jack Davis clutter panels and those Will Elder chicken fat panels. I mean, that one Deadpool cover, where he's all beat to shit.
Yeah.
There's a sign in the back that says chicken fat.
I love it.
little nod to Will Elder there. Like, that stuff is, like, I find great joy in just stuffing a panel with Easter eggs and gags as much as possible, but it is heinously counterproductive.
That's fantastic. You know what? Before we run out of time, Tony, because you have other things to do with your night. Steve, did you have anything in the chat you wanted to address?
It was. I've never seen, like, I think they were like me. They had their screen full. They filled the browser to the full screen so they could see every square inch of the art.
Either that or I'm just fucking boring.
No, gosh, no. We've seen this. When the art's on the screen, it gets quiet. It gets Well, a question from you on YouTube, Will I Ambo, Tony, will you do any more cons?
Yeah, I will. Like they take a lot out of me.
Yeah.
Uh, and even before the pandemic, like I would come home from every show sick,
Mhm.
like
Hmm.
every.
The con crud.
Yeah, I mean that shit is real.
Yeah, it is.
And then when we entered like the modern plague era, like
Mhm.
at that point I was like hard pass, not interested at all in uh, sitting in an active like nerd filled petri dish. Um, like
Yeah.
I to just like guarantee that I'm going to come home sick with
Right.
something potentially horrifically dangerous. Like,
Right.
no thanks. But I've been, I've done some. I've actually been like most of the conventions I've done recently were like tattoo conventions
Mm.
because like it's a different audience. I've kind of saturated. Like I don't have a lot of new comics work. I don't have any new comics work on shelves right
Mhm.
now, so I've kind of saturated my comic audience. But my
Mhm.
tattoo audiences don't know that much about me, so I'm kind of new.
So go ahead. Go ahead. Mike.
I was going to say that one of the things I noticed with some conventions now, so you have the cosplay people and you have the actors. Now I see that they're having tattoo people at the comic.
Mm.
Oh, right, yeah. I mean, I could see it. Like a lot of those guys are like, hardcore comics nerds as well. Like the
Mhm.
illustrator style, illustrative style of tattooing is uh, pretty prevalent in the industry now. It's just a little fancier than your American traditional. Um, I've even like there are like comics guys who've made the transition over. I don't know if you know Eric Talbot that
Mhm.
used to work on Ninja Turtles.
Mhm.
He's been tattooing out of my friend Ben's studio in Massachusetts for a while, and he's really freaking good at it. I mean, he's as good a tattooer as he was an inker, and he's one of the best inkers.
Wow.
Mhm.
I mean, he's a brilliant artist all around. Um, but yeah, there's a lot of cross pollination, I think.
And even to that, like say when you're doing kind of, I'll just call it alternative exhibitioning, right? Like going to a tattoo convention or something like that. Are people like, have you run into people who are like, I have no idea who you are, or they're like, oh shit, Tony Moore, what are you doing here? Or is there a little mix of both with?
It's a mix for sure. A lot of people see like the Walking Dead trade paperbacks and be like, is this based on the show? I'm like, actually, the opposite. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, it's real.
surprise. Um, but then, yeah, like I said, you got tattoo artists.
Mhm.
Who, I mean, I know a ton of tattoo artists that got into it wanting to become comic book artists, and just didn't make that leap and decided um, to get into tattooing, and frankly, probably made better money for their lives
Mm,
because of
mhm.
it. Um, but yeah, it's a mix.
That's awesome. So
That's great.
I'm going to leave the screen, and Tony, we're going to start wrapping you up. But Mike wanted to do some show and tell before we got out of here.
Yeah, I was going through a bunch of stuff the other day, and Tony and I have actually worked together a couple times on some Fear Agent stuff. I
Mhm.
finished up some did finishes over your, I guess like your breakdowns, and then we also worked on some Ninja Turtle stuff with Rick
Yeah, yeah,
back in the
yeah.
day.
That was a wild.
Right.
I was just
So
visiting him, and he was like, "Hey, man, I'm like in the weeds on this. Do you think you could help me?" I was like, "Sure, man."
right, right. So this is, I'm going to put this up. You can see the date.
Yeah, what does that say? February 2006.
2006. Ancient history. It
So
doesn't seem like it could be that long.
yeah. So here's the page. So it was your roughs, which were I printed out in blue,
Uh huh.
and then did the finishes on.
Yeah,
That's nice.
those are great. And I remember I drew those on printer paper and just inked them with like regular ballpoint pens, just to have them tight enough that you could understand what was happening.
Yeah, yeah. So I always enjoy working that way. I always liked inking other people's stuff, doing finishes, and so it was fun because you get to contribute a little bit more. But I always those were and I really liked Fear Agent, so those were fun jobs. And then I think I inked Jerome Opena's. That was some of his early work, I think, because he spelled you, I think, on an issue or two.
He what me?
Did he take over or like it?
So we would alternate arcs
Right.
every 4 or so issues. We would trade the book back and forth. So we had kind of angles of the story that we would hit with me, and then other angles we would hit with Jerome, and then they would kind of converge.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was an honor to have you helping us out on that stuff.
Oh well, it was a lot of fun it was great to be asked. It was a lot of fun. Is there going to be more Fear Agent, you think, in the future?
I don't know. I mean, like story wise, I felt like we were pretty satisfied with where we wrapped it and ended it, but at the same time, like, we also had those like kind of short story, like some of them we just considered like non-canonical, and some of it we just consider that it's just wedged in kind of the unaccounted for time periods of his life. And I think we could explore that stuff without undoing anything that we had structured and with the main story, like without wrecking it. But yeah, I mean, I'd like to draw him more. He's always fun to draw.
That's fantastic, and I think Fear Agent is probably one of those things that I've bought several times in different iterations. Because I think I have like the Thin Mint trades, and then I think I bought one of the hardcovers around here. So it's good stuff, man.
And I seem to remember, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but when you guys pitched the name Fear Agent to Image, they were like, "Well, that's not a good name. That's a weird."
We probably had 15 different fucking names for that book, and they didn't like any of them. And Fear Agent was the one that stuck. But we had, like, I think at one point we were just going to call it Houston after Heath. Lone Star was a name we were going to call it because he's from Texas and he's alone in space. Like, that felt like a home run, but they weren't down with it. We had like just a list as long as your arm of titles, and they just weren't down with any of them. And Rick was sitting at his computer, and he looked up at a stack of CDs he had on his desk, and he had a Fear CD sitting on top of an Agent Orange CD, and he was like, "All right," he wrote it down.
This is the
one they like.
The lightning bolt.
Yeah.
So, Tony, my last question to you, and then I think we'll let you go pee, is how often or how many things do you kind of have sitting around? Like, are people continuously pitching you comic projects, and you kind of have to weigh them, or you just kind of like, I don't know, I don't think so, or maybe, or how does that slush pile look to you these days?
It's a lot more chill than it used to be. Like, I'd kind of like gotten to the point that I had to like numb myself to outside pitches because like I had projects that I was trying to do with friends, and then I've got a notebook of stuff that's been kind of composting ideas for stuff I want to do for myself. and then stuff that I'm being pitched by companies and all that stuff, and uh, it's definitely like chilled out a whole lot because I've become fairly reclusive here in the last like 5 years or so. And so like I'm not getting reached out to anymore by Marvel or DC or anything for corporate work because um, like I had to pull back on that stuff when my mother-in-law was sick. I was like I I can't be on a deadline. I have to be available. And then I just never really re-entered uh, the Rolodex. I kind of stayed focused on homesteading and doing other shit.
Yeah.
Uh,
I wanted to ask you, since you were talking about being diagnosed with ADHD, and I know, gosh, several other people that I've known, some former students and stuff, that were not diagnosed as kids, but also diagnosed as adults. And so, did that change your work structure once did you like lay out your workday differently, moderate things differently? Because I know that some people who were diagnosed with that have a different regimen, I guess.
I probably should. Um, it has at least given me some insight into like how my brain works, and I can plan around things a little better. And being aware of like the shortcomings that has intrinsically kind of hardwired into my brain. But then at the same time, like uh, it's always referred to and treated as this, like malady, whatever, like it's something wrong with me. And at the same time, I'm like, I mean, sure, yeah, it comes with some sacrifices that are, not great. But at the same time, like if I want to like I picked up Nomad Sculpt and started teaching myself how to do that a couple of years ago, and I was making like big headway real fast. And I thought like I don't think most like neurotypical people probably can't just sit and absorb something in a matter of like a month or two and like develop a new skill set from scratch. Or like like yeah, I can't if my wife sends me to the grocery store for three things, I forgot two of them by the time I got to the car. But I can draw an M1 Abrams tank from memory. Like it's kind of a superpower, and I'm a little bit tired of pretending it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
And so, it's just like that awareness of like kind of knowing what I'm up against and dealing with like with myself. It has helped. But that said, like, I'm my own boss, and that guy runs a pretty loose ship.
I think about that monk line where they say, "Oh, it's a gift," and he always responds, "And a curse." It's a gift and a curse.
White elephant gift.
Is there a place where we can see those 3D sculpts? I'm gonna get all nerdy about the Nomad sculpt.
I've got some on my Instagram, I think. I don't have my iPad here. I would just airdrop one over to Jamar, but
well, we can have people check out your Insta anyway, because that's
sure.
Yeah. I had sat down. That little frog, the little banjo playing frog.
Yeah.
That was in the Kicking It poster was the first model that I was teaching myself how to do, and I would watch Glenn Southern's tutorials on YouTube. I was just making my way through those, and I would watch a tutorial, and then I would sit down with my model and try to apply what he had just shown me to that, to the model. And I would just do a little bit of that like every night. And I say I was tinkering with it, but then it would become like, it was an hour. And then it was like, 2 or 3 hours, and then it was basically I just spent my whole work day on it. But I'm saying like, oh, I'm just tinkering with it in my free time. But it's literally been like weeks straight of me like,
It's like
learning
I'm
how to
so
do it.
obsessed now with Nomad Sculpt. We got to get the.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
Yeah, you and Steve need to link up. That's
Yeah,
good.
we got to talk
I
about.
initially got it because I love fiddling with Hero Forge.
Mhm.
I like to one. I was making 3D models of like my character from the D&D campaign I was playing, and then I started making the all the other guys in my party. I made them, and then you can kind of kit bash the elements a little bit, like use elements in ways that they weren't really intended. So then I sat down. I was like trying to make like comic book characters. And so I made like I made a set that was like all the swamp dudes. And so I had like the Eat from Airboy Comics and Swamp Thing and Bog the Swamp Demon and Man Thing. And I tried to make them like as close to that as I could with the weird little limited parts that I could use, like using spells, but then like placing it like way up into their arm because there's no collision physics or anything. So I was like misusing elements and repainting them. And then so the whole idea when I got Nomad was that I was gonna buy the STLs from Hero Forge and then like hyper customize them in Nomad because I mean the software is like $15 and it's like a training wheels version of ZBrush, but for $15 you can't afford to not get it. Like it's
100%, 100%. And it works on iOS device. I was going to add, they're not a sponsor. iOS and Android devices. Android lets you do a little free trial. Every cartoonist should try it. I swear.
It's amazing. Like my hope is to build character references that are stylized the way I draw them, and then just having the most bulletproof character reference that I can, if I can take it into Blender and rig it with a skeleton and have it posable, then it'll have the proportions of my drawing style, and that type of stuff. But I can make sure it's consistent for like, really hairy technical stuff where I might want to pose a bunch of stuff and keep track of 45 different things in a scene or whatever. Like, I don't know.
I mean, that's not really so far from like back when people would make little like Sculpey heads.
Oh, for sure, yeah. I mean, you see like those maquettes that like James Gurney would make for Dinotopia or stuff like that. I mean,
and Corbin did. He sculpted stuff all the time.
Oh yeah. I mean, like that whole thought process was the entire reason I got Nomad and was trying to teach it to myself. But then also like working with the 3D animators on the Tyler video, like there was a communication gap because that was a length, like working in comics, because I taught myself the ink, and taught myself the color, taught myself Illustrator, so I can kind of speak the language of whoever else on the assembly line I'm working with. I can speak their language because I understand what they do. But when it came to working with these 3D guys, like I had nothing. Because that was a realm that I mean I did like a 10-second animation in Max like in college 20 years ago, but like that's not applicable at all to modern shit. And so it's like I'm gonna teach myself how to do this for real. And that's it's still my goal. I mean, I haven't fiddled with it in kind of a long time, but I've got a handful of like half-finished models. I was playing with the Ghoul Lunatics from EC Comics because Crypt Keeper got this great glow up from HBO, but the other two didn't get anything. So I sat down and like redesigned the old witch and the Vault Keeper to like separate them a little more and like kind of give them more individual designs, and was 3D sculpting those. And there's a post like kind of way down that has some progress stuff of my old witch on my Instagram thing, but I don't think I ever posted the Vault Keeper. He's looked horrendous so far. I'm really happy with it.
Well, you're gonna see a whole lot of likes suddenly from like old stuff.
I was gonna ask Tony. I feel like we scratched the surface, but I don't. You know, I always say at the end of these things, "Where's the time go?"
Right.
And I hope you enjoyed this.
Yeah, this was a blast. Yeah.
You know, I would love to have you back if you're interested in
Anytime, man.
in the near future. All right, awesome. Thank you.
For sure. And hopefully, I'll have some cool new shit to talk about.
Mike, any last words?
Just that it's sort of incredible to watch the progress of an artist over the course of what, almost 20 years, because that's almost 20 years ago we met.
I was a kid when I first met you guys. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys like that old mailing list that you guys had. Like, I learned so much from you guys on that. Like, you know, like getting feedback on work as it went. You know, being able to have a guy like Bill Ray look at my color compositions and tell me where I'm fucking it up. Like that's a godsend. You know, I owe you guys a ton, an eternal debt of gratitude for all your help through the years.
Well, it's always, I feel that is one of the most important things about comics is the sharing, which is what you used to get in the bullpens and things like that. The old guys would share and they'd have, you know, you'd be an assistant for something. And that's one of the best things about the internet is you can, you know, we may not be able to all be in the same room, obviously, but we can do the same thing. We can use technology to share. But yeah, it's been great watching your run up the charts, as they say.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Steve, anything before we
Thanks for sharing all your work. It's just awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate it. And I'll probably be picking your brain on Nomad shit. I've got some specific problems I'm trying to solve that I don't exactly know the best path forward.
And also, Tony, I know if I come visit, I'll call ahead. I'll just
yeah, for sure. For sure. You wouldn't. You probably need to call for help to find me in the first place. You just sat out on an expedition by yourself.
And bring your D&D dice, apparently.
Oh yeah, we're gonna have to talk about D&D.
Yeah, we should, for sure. I mean, I love it. I got to ask though, like, what class? What's your class?
Oh, I'm a DM, and Steve plays.
I wrapped up a bard. I'm starting a cleric at the moment.
I love playing cleric. I like playing support classes. I'd never played a tank until this most recent campaign, and I fell in love with playing paladins, man. Like, it's like the weirdest. I never thought that would be like where I'm at, but like I totally love it.
We got to get Manley to play. That'd be great.
I told you guys, I played once.
You played once, like in
high school,
right?
Once, and I didn't.
It didn't click.
It didn't click.
It's not any more emotionally mature now than it was then. But
oh my gosh, that's amazing. Tony, do you still have your group, or you kind of haven't played as much as you used to?
When the pandemic kind of started to peter out, everybody had to go back to work.
Yeah,
and so we haven't played in a long time. I actually just signed up for this service called Questbound, and it's a visual programming setup that you can build kind of like a D&D Beyond visual interface, like, you know, but you can build it for any game. And so I've got this Wild West role-playing game called Aces and Eights that I really want to play because the combat mechanics are really crunchy, like really crunchy, and it should be a lot of fun. And I love cowboy shit, so like, I want to run that game, but at the same time, like, I have the books and they're kind of expensive. I don't expect all the other guys to buy the books,
right?
So if I can build an interface for that on this new service, and at least have like workable character sheets that can, you know, kind of help everybody, because all the guys I play with are scattered all over the place. It's usually Zoom.
It's all Zoom
anyway.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm hoping to try to run aces and eights here before too long.
Well, we need to talk. I'm going to text you later because I have some other stuff that I'm into this too. So
I've got another one called Shooting Iron. Steve just said Boot Hill. But,
yo, all right. I gotta end this. We're nerding out.
Derailed.
This episode took a turn. I don't know how we got here.
we should have turned earlier, but Mike would have had to tune out.
Mike's gonna have the Cookie Monster
I'm
eyes.
done with
He's like, I'm over it. Tony Moore, you're a ray of sunshine. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Being on the live stream, you've made all of our lives so much richer. And we celebrate you, man. I love your journey. I love what you're doing, and I love that we can still kick it, guys.
Yeah, man.
Thank you so much, guys. This has been Pencil to Pencil for our good guest Tony, for Mike and Steve. I'm JAMAR Nicholas. Oh, Tony, you can't leave before we do the thing, guys. We're in the end times. I know you see the polar caps are shrinking. I saw a polar bear with Speedos on. This is kind of the end. We're kind of at the end of this, you guys. But I would be remiss if I told you to not go into that cold, dark night without washing your Kirby hands. Put your Kirby hands up, Tony. Let's see some good Tony.
Actually, get that. I want to do that.
Oh, yeah. We got to get some Tony Moore hands.
Hey,
Get your Tony hands up. I love it.
You get your like Don Martin, like head trauma wrists.
Your carpal tunnel hands.
I love it. Guys, thanks so much. We'll see you next week.